Don't be fooled by the cackle. I'll repeat. Don't be fooled by the cackle. Kamala Harris's cackle conceals the content of her character. And with that, thanks for joining me. I'm Brian Sussman. I would like to give a big shout out, first and foremost, to my great friend, longtime friend, Greg Hunter, USA Watchdog, who encouraged me to go for it and take my game up to another level regarding podcasting. I knew Greg way back in the day when he was just getting out of college and needed a job. He was interested in television. I hired him at a small ABC TV newsroom in Columbia, Missouri that I managed, and he was obviously my greatest hire. So shout out to Greg Hunter, USA Watchdog. Kamala Harris. I've been watching her closely for many, many years. In fact, she became the district attorney of California when I had my radio show in San Francisco. I should say the district attorney of San Francisco. She eventually became the attorney general of California, but she was the DA in San Francisco. I had my radio show. And I've got San Francisco stories to share in this episode that you need to hear because we need to get the word out. This woman is as progressive, or perhaps more progressive, than any member of the Congressional Democrat squad. She conceals her progressive, liberal, radical ways with the cackle. It's like so many people, when they're caught in a lie, what do? Well, I would never do that. That's the cackle. She does not want you to know how radical she is. Now, let's just go back in time for starters, and then I'll get to her tenure as DA. And in our next episode, I'm going to talk to you about her tenure as Attorney General of the state of California. This woman has never seen an illegal immigrant that she didn't want to set free. She has cop killers. To me, that's the worst of all offenses. You kill a cop? Oh, she gives those kind a break as well. She even once referred to federal ICE agents as being akin to the KKK. This is Kamala Harris. Friends, this election is the most important of certainly my lifetime. Everything's on the line. If this woman gets into the White House, oh, she's way more progressive than Joe Biden. And even if we have the House and the Senate, she will use executive orders. She will use the power of the pen. She will use regulations to fundamentally transform the United States of America into something that her parents dreamed of. Okay, well, let's go there for just a moment. Her father is from Jamaica. Her mother is from India. No problem with that. None whatsoever. But when people come to this country and want to become citizens, what I want them to do is bleed red, white, and blue. I want them to be for the American dream. I want them to understand the wonderful, incredible, unbelievable, God-given rights we have of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But instead, her parents were radicals. They settled in Berkeley, California. At that time, the 60s and 70s, Berkeley was the epicenter of radicalism in the United States of America. Berkeley's right next to Oakland. It's in Alameda County, just across the Bay Bridge from San Francisco. It's where UC Berkeley is, University of California, Berkeley. That's where they set up shop. And they were part of a very radical organization as a young married couple. This was the incubator that brought forth Kamala Harris. By the way, some people get a little pinched because I refer to as Kamala as opposed to Kamala. I just remember when she was DA in San Francisco, we always said Kamala. So that's where that comes from. But I've got a bunch of my old show notes that I want to go through to just illustrate and give you an idea of how radical she was as the DA in San Francisco. Now, keep in mind, how did her career begin? I talked about this in the last episode, so I'll just gloss over it. But it began with her affair with Willie Brown. Willie Brown was a very charismatic leader of the assembly, the legislative body in Sacramento. He was 60, she was 29, going on 30 when they had their affair. He was married, he was separated, he had a lot of girlfriends. So she was one of them. And I told you the story in the last episode, how she ran to a friend of mine and she told him, I'm having an affair with Willie Brown. And my friend said, well, it's probably going to be the best thing that ever happened to your political career. And it was. Because shortly thereafter, she was an attorney in the district attorney's office in Alameda County. She got 2 appointments by Willie Brown, 2 appointments to some commissions in Sacramento. One paid over $70,000, the other paid over $90,000. So here she is in the 90s, making almost $200,000 just by working on commissions. Forget her real job. Pretty sweet work if you can get it. And Willie Brown has said, when she became the vice president, Willie Brown was very open about this. He's an old guy now. He was old then, but he's a really old guy now. And he was saying how he opened the doors for her political career. He was unabashed about that. So that's nothing that's new, but I just want to give you the inside story here. So now she becomes district attorney. Listen, everybody in elected office in San Francisco County is progressive. Everybody in Alameda County, for the most part, progressive. So she was a progressive prosecutor. That's how she billed herself, a progressive prosecutor. Now, this is before the woke DAs that George Soros has instituted around the country. This is way before. This is in the 90s. This is 93. She was working in the DA's office in Alameda County in 1993. She became district attorney for San Francisco in 2004. She called herself a progressive prosecutor. Well, what did that look like? What did that look like? Well, let me start with one thing. I'm just going to progressively build up the list here. So I hope you'll stay tuned for this. First thing she started was this program called Back on Track. It allowed first-time drug offenders, including drug dealers, including illegal aliens who are drug dealers, to get a high school diploma or a job instead of prison time. So in other words, okay, you're going to go to jail, you're going to go to prison, but we're going to cut you a break. And if you get your high school diploma, or if you have a job and you hold it for a certain period of time, we will expunge your record. Again, she likes to tout this program. It was a small program. They got $750,000 in federal funding for the program. But let me just give you one example of how things didn't work out so well. Alexander Izaguirre. He pleaded guilty to selling drugs. He was also an illegal immigrant. He had been arrested several times before. He was selected. He didn't ask to go in the program. He was selected to get into the Back on Track program. He graduated from the program. His record was expunged. And what ends up happening? He ends up hijacking a car with a woman inside. He pushes her out of the car, has her purse, and in the process of driving away, he runs over her, severely injuring her. That's the Back on Track program from Kamala Harris. So if she ever brings that up, didn't work out all that well. Then Harris made big waves, when she refused to seek the death penalty for a man convicted of shooting police officer Isaac Espinoza and his partner Barry Parker. David Hall was the shooter. He was 20 years old at the time. This is in the Bayview, Hunters Point area of San Francisco. Espinoza is, this guy had wanted to be a cop since he was in high school. And now he's a cop in San Francisco, and he wanted to go into the toughest neighborhoods of San Francisco because he was a law enforcement officer who thought he was doing the right thing. And he was. They came upon a guy, again, the guy's name is David Hall, big guy, 20 years old. David Hall had been in trouble his entire life. He'd been in and out of juvenile hall. He spent time at the California Youth Authority, which is, essentially a jail for troubled youth who can't be officially sent to jail. He was so bad he got kicked out of some of those programs. So now he's 20 years old. He's on the streets of San Francisco, and Isaac and Parker knew just who he was. He made a suspicious move towards his body, which led them to believe this guy's got a gun. We need to stop him. They shouted at him to stop walking. He wouldn't. They shouted again, and he said, "Oh, come on, man, I don't even have any ID." They shouted again, approached him. Their guns were not drawn. He ends up turning around. David Hall turns around and has an AK-47 that he was able to pull out of his clothing. And he rips off 12 to 14 rounds, killing Espinoza, wounding Parker. A police officer has been killed, another wounded. Now listen to this. Kamala Harris would not go for the death penalty. She would not call this a first-degree murder, which in the state of California can equate to the death penalty. She wouldn't go there. She called it second-degree murder because it wasn't planned. I'll never forget, even Dianne Feinstein, who was senator at the time, Dianne Feinstein, who was incredibly liberal, Dianne Feinstein was enraged about this. Travesty of justice. And she even said something to that degree when she was at the funeral with all these police officers. Kamala Harris didn't show up at that funeral. Dianne Feinstein did. Wouldn't go for the death sentence. Instead, it was life without a chance for parole. And then there's one more story. And this is a story that I find so troubling because, well, you'll understand in just a moment. There was a guy named Edwin Ramos. This is now 2009. Edwin Ramos was an illegal alien in San Francisco who had committed many crimes. San Francisco was a sanctuary city. It still is. This is why illegals love to go there, putting everyone at risk. So here he is, in trouble, on and off, illegal alien, Edwin Ramos, member of MS-13, a very, very dangerous Latino gang. He ends up approaching a car with 4 men, a father and 3 of his sons. Their last name was Bologna. He executes the father first, then executes 2 of the sons, and doesn't, for whatever reason, execute the 3rd son who saw it all. Now, he said it was a case of mistaken identity. He said he thought these were some rival gang members. Hardly. They did not look the part of rival gang members. They're driving a nice sedan. Mr. Bologna, respected member of the community, raising 3 kids in a wonderful way. So we're really not sure what this was all about. But nonetheless, Ramos killed them in cold blood, bullets to the head. And a son sees it all, and he becomes the main witness in the trial because he could identify this guy. And I believe to this day he's in the witness protection program. But here's the deal. Catherine Harris would not go after, she would not use the death penalty. She would not call this a first-degree murder that deserved punishment via the death penalty. She would not go there. And as a result, This guy ended up life in prison without possibility for parole. But I'll never forget this. I was conducting my radio show in San Francisco, and we got a call. My producer said, it's Mrs. Bologna. And I'm like, what? Talk to her a little further. Make sure this is the real deal because we don't want to get screwed on the radio with a fake. It was her. She pleaded over my airwaves for, I don't know, 20 minutes through tears for the DA's office in San Francisco to please prosecute this guy with the death penalty. It was just, you couldn't console her. And for good reason. She had lost her husband and two of her kids. And now the one child left who saw it all scarred for life. Kamala Harris would not use the death penalty. And you know what the crazy thing is? I mean, here's Ramos. He's illegal, an illegal alien in San Francisco, and he had twice served probation for violent crimes, but was never deported. Now, can I tell you something? This is Kamala Harris. She hasn't changed her stripes. She didn't change them when she was Attorney General. She conceals her radicalism with that cackle. Don't buy it for a moment. Now, let me just appeal to you, please. I'm doing these podcasts now live on Rumble every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We're trying to post them at other locations, but I tried posting the last one on Kamala Harris Monday show, episode 248 on Facebook. And of course, Facebook just tears it down right away, sends me a nasty note for being a hater or something like that. We're up against a media machine that won't tell you the truth about this woman. You have to understand. We're going to be inundated with propaganda regarding this woman's stellar career. And so she's going to be a president for everyone. It's not the truth. We all need to step up our game. Gosh. Everything is on the line here. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. And I'll remind you of my most recent book, Climate Cult, exposing and defeating their war on life, liberty, and property. Because that's what the climate agenda is all about. They're using that to destroy this nation. Well, guess what? The destroyer in chief will be Kamala Harris. We cannot let this happen. You have to talk to your friends. If you have any friends, neighbors, or relatives who are saying, well, I'm not going to vote, then guess what? They disqualify themselves from ever complaining. We've got to get them in the game. Even people in California say, well, my vote doesn't count out here. You know she's going to win. Trump will never have a chance. We have to give it our best shot on all levels. And we have to make sure that we take Congress lock, stock, and barrel. We need men and women of good conservative character to be elected into office. And we need to boot out the rhinos. We need to make sure no liberal gets into office for such a time as this. And I'll say this again. I said it in the last podcast, and probably in each one of these going forward, I will say it again. For my Christian brother or sister, please look who you're voting for. If you're going to vote for Kamala Harris, she is as anti-abortion as anti-abortion could possibly be. You know why, as borders are, she never went to the border once? Because she doesn't think there's a problem with illegal aliens pouring into our country. This has been her track record. Not prosecuting them to the full extent of the law. This is Kamala Harris. That's why she was the perfect border czar. And she's for the entire woke, anti-biblical agenda, lock, stock, and barrel. So, Christian man, Christian woman, are you for that? Oh, you don't like Donald Trump. You don't like his personality. Then look at the party's platform. And by the way, in the world in which we live, there are some very bad actors. Very bad actors in many quarters of this world. We need someone tough in that White House. We need a negotiator. We need a strong arm. We need somebody who's intimidating. We need someone who you just can't calculate exactly how he's going to respond. That's what you need in the White House, because these strong men around the world, the Putins, the Xi's, Kim Jong-il's, they only respect strength, and especially strength that they can't quite predict in terms of response. It keeps them on their toes. This is what we need for such a time as this. Now, in our next episode on Friday, I'm going to talk about Kamala's record as Attorney General, because she'll tell you she was the top cop in California. That's what she told the New York Times. She'll tell you what a great progressive prosecutor she was. So she told Newsweek magazine. None of that's the truth. She's not for the rule of law. She's for the rules of radicals. So don't buy the smiles. Don't buy the laughs. Don't be fooled by the cackle. It's concealing the content of her heart. If you enjoyed this podcast, please, I pray that you'll share it. Tell others about it. Make sure you follow me as well. I appreciate this Rumble platform. And again, kudos to my good friend Greg Hunter for encouraging me to take my game to the next level for, again, such a time as this. God bless you, my friends. Continue to pray for me. And we'll all pray for the United States of America, because, boy, she needs our prayers now, perhaps more than ever. God bless you, friends. Brian Sussman, signing off.